che si trasforma in un brand. Gaston Cheq era un sindacalista, mettiamola così, in maniera molto più semplice. Era uno grandissimo democratico, cercava di proteggere, di dare voce a
Gaston Cheq tried to give voice to small producers of Chardonnay in particular, and he has always, so Aube, the area of Aube, has always been very suitable to the very important variety that makes great champagne, Pinot Noir. So the cooperative that makes the wines we are about to taste is a cooperative founded in 1961. It's a small cooperative, one of the smallest in the area of Champagne and the smallest in Aube. Aube is that small area of land between Champagne, the most famous Champagne, and Bourgogne. So we are to the east of France, in northeastern France, let's say, and we are north to the Champagne region. So you will taste 5 labels that represent the production of Gaston Cheq. And we will also do an experiment. We will close our eyes with the third glass to taste how important and how relevant is the influence of the sea. So the influence of the sea winds that come from the Atlantic Ocean onto these wines, because they design the profile, the colors, the flavors of this wine. This is all done by the winds, and winds are so important. So at the moment, we have the first wine, which they consider to be a sort of entry-level champagne, even though I hate saying entry-level, because every wine from every winery has a specific identity and should have one. However, I use the terminology that they use. First of all, my name is Francesco Bruno Fadda. I am a journalist because I didn't want to work hard, and so I decided to become a journalist. Then, in the end, I fell in love with this wonderful world. 20 years ago, when I changed my area to focus on tourism and enogastronomy, I changed my life quite a lot. However, so I don't work much actually as a journalist, despite I work with an important wine magazine. In any case, I decided to find a kind of champagne that could be easy to drink, agile, and above all, easy to find. So easy to find, so to have good ease of drinking and ease of purchase. And I met the Gaston Cheq, and I decided to import Gaston Cheq in Italy. It's distributed by Acqua Spiritosa in Italy. Acqua Spiritosa is a distributor. And so Acqua Spiritosa distributes it in Italy and also in Czech Republic. I fell in love with this champagne and with this wine, but before falling in love with the sip and flavors and of the romantic flavors of champagne, but first of all, I fell in love with their story, their long story. because we go back to the personality, the key personality behind this tasting, Gaston Cheq. I guess you all know the wars and the fights in Champagne in the mid-19th century. The big maison, the big estates, decided that Aube, that was where a lot of Pinot Noir was made, should no longer be part of the Champagne production area. And since they were very strong from the financial standpoint, they decided to exclude the Aube from this consortium, so from the identity, the DOC of Champagne. And of course, that was a heavy blow for Aube from the economic standpoint. And for about 1 year, all the producers in Aube had very significant economic challenges. No one wanted their grapes anymore. Despite they were so important to make champagne, no one was buying at the price that they were asking for. And that over the years ensured good return, good profitability. And then Gaston Cheq came into play, and he acted as a trade unionist, and he was championing a new idea. And he said, fine, if you don't want our grapes, we don't sell them. And let's see what the result can be. Maybe we will suffer for a year, 2 years, 3 years, or maybe not. Because who has ever said that we cannot make wonderful wines outside the appellation of Champagne? Why not? And actually, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, they have grown. They have grown so much and so successfully and so exponentially that after 4 years of fight, because the big maisons, of course, and the big maison, Clicquot, our beloved widow, was the first customer of Pinot Noir in Aube, the Moet Group, that was already quite a large winery. And it was one of the very first, most important customers of Aube. And so after 3-4 years of these fights, the first agreements were signed. And so the price went back to the right level. However, they were not yet admitted as Aube in Champagne, and so this was not acceptable for Gaston Cheq. This was not something he could be happy with. He wanted something different, desired something different, and needed something different for his producers, his children. That's the way he would call them. Then, towards the end of the 20th century, because this has happened between 1880 and 1895. So finally, after an additional protest of all Aube producers, and we should learn from them actually, because if there is something that we can love of French people is that they are all very, they all go in the same direction. They join forces and work together. And so Gaston Cheq managed to readmit Aube in the big family of Champagne. And so these wines from Aube could again be called with this name, this brand, which, as you can imagine, is not just about prestige and just about the romantic idea of using that name, but it's also an economic and financial motivation. And so in Aube, we have many new cooperatives that started to grow, and this is one of them. Dulandion Cooperative, Dulandion is the owner of the Gaston Cheq brand, so was founded in 1961 with one prerequisite. That is to say, the members of the cooperative are all producers, so only producers. And only for one cooperative, the Cooperative de Londion, and one brand, that is to say, Gaston Cheq. So they would sell the grapes, sell their own grapes, and then produce the wines. And this is also something else that we should learn from French people. Then, of course, we are nicer and more beautiful. I hope there are no French here in the room, but in any case, I'm joking, of course. Having said that, I mean, I gave you this kind of long overview about the history of this cooperative. And so let's now taste the first glass, the Brut. Brut, 48 months on the lease, and only and exclusively in this case, 1 year. Because at Gaston, they don't use different years, different vintages for a millésime. And this is also part of their philosophy. So you don't have blends of different years. And this is a particular characteristic of this winery. We have a lot of freshness resulting from the small amount of Chardonnay, 20%, and 80% is Pinot Noir. And remember that this is a cooperative that has at its disposal 180 hectares. Producers are 80, and out of 100 hectares, 93% of them are Pinot Noir, and the rest is between Pinot Meunier and Chardonnay. In the case of this Brut, technically it's a Blanc de Noir, so you can perceive the Pinot Noir in the first sip, on the nose. It's explosive, and I tell you before you tell me, it has bubbles that look weak. And this is actually what I hear from the tastings with Gaston's wines. Yes, true, the bubbles are weak because we are not accustomed to drink Brut, 80% Pinot Noir, with 48 months on the lease and with low pressure. That's done on purpose, so that's not a mistake. That's the indication of the maître de cave. So instead of working at 45 millibars, he works at 35 millibars. And of course, he jokes, I don't want the New Year Eve noise, because bubbles need to be creamy, shouldn't distract us from the sip, and bubbles must be something that helps to support the flavors and the message conveyed to the nose. That's it. And then it has to give us the creaminess that must stay. And above all, the bubbles must be elegant. Of course, this is a technique which isn't very widespread. because if you work at a higher pressure, and also because you are accustomed to that kind of bubble, especially for the base wine, the beige champagne. So we are used to have bubbles that are strong, that push, so we want to perceive it on the palate. But in this case, that's not the case. So he wants it in this way, and of course, that's his philosophy.
Abbiamo un ventaglio
We
di
have
profumi,
a
abbiamo
wide
una
range
scala
of
di
flavors, a
profumi
scale of
in
flavors
bocca
on the
scusate, al
palate
naso
and
che
on the
poi
nose.
risentiamo
So on the nose that then we
nel
perceive
sorso
again on the palate.
intensi.
So intense
E il Pinot Noir
flavors,
lo
and
sentiamo,
we
abbiamo proprio
perceive
quasi
Pinot
voglia di
Noir.
masticarlo,
We almost
sentiamo
want to chew
l'acido,
it.
sentiamo la
So
sua
we
buccia,
perceive the
sentiamo
berries,
la
the
sua
skin, we
leggera,
perceive the
per quanto
light,
fitta trama,
though
la sentiamo
dense
proprio. E
texture
questo è
of Pinot Noir.
loro
And
Pinot
this
Noir,
is
questo è il
their
loro modo
Pinot
di
Noir.
lavorare.
So this is their way of
Ovviamente hanno
working
necessità di
Pinot
avere
Noir.
una
Of
piccola
course,
spindacina,
they need to
avevano
have
necessità di avere freschezza,
some acidity,
avevano
some
necessità
freshness,
di
and
poggiarsi, di camminare, di
to, let's say,
andare avanti a
walk and
braccetto con quella che è
hug
la nota che tutti cerchiamo
the
in
note
un
that we all
brut
look
e
for
quello che
in a
cerchiamo
brut
in un vino di questo
and
genere,
in this kind of
ovvero
wine,
l'acidità.
that is to say,
Ecco che con
acidity.
il
And so
20% di
with
Chardonnay
20%
abbiamo
Chardonnay, we
la chiusura
have
del cerchio,
all what we need.
perfetta dal punto di vista
So
tecnico,
that's
poi
perfect
naturalmente
from a
sta al
technical
vostro palato
standpoint. Then it's up to
decidere se
you to
realmente è
decide
perfetta o
whether
no.
this is truly perfect or not.
Altra cosa che sicuramente dopo
Something
mi
else that
chiederete
you
o
will
comunque
ask me
rimarcherete,
probably,
perché
or you
comunque
will
siamo tutti,
highlight, because we are
insomma,
all,
abbiamo un
so we all
palato e
have
abbiamo
a
un'abitudine legata allo
palate,
champagne
and
molto precisa,
we
soprattutto
have
in
our
Italia.
habits,
L'Italia si divide
especially in Italy.
in due
In Italy,
categorie,
we have two categories
gli champagnisti
of the
e
champagnisti,
gli champagnisti tecnici.
and the champagnisti tecnici, so champagne
I
lovers and
champagnisti
technical
tecnici
champagne
sono quelli
lovers.
sempre più
Champagnisti
indicati, come
tecnici,
sempre,
so
come
the
tutti i tecnici,
technical
che siano
champagne
moderni, che siano
experts,
sommelier, che siano
you shouldn't trust
bar
them. You should
Poi ci
always,
sono invece i
you
champagnisti, cioè
should
i
never
champagnisti
trust
sono quelli
those
che
who are too
bevono lo
technical.
champagne perché gli
Whereas those
piace,
who are
bevono lo
champagnisti are
champagne
just
perché lo
champagne
sanno
lovers.
abbinare
Drink
e
it,
lo sanno
they
abbinare
drink it
significa che lo
because
abbinano a
they
qualsiasi
like
piatto, a
it, they
qualsiasi
know how to
momento
pair
o a
it, they
qualsiasi
know how
pezzo
to pair it
musicale
with any
o
dish,
come abbiamo
any
fatto ieri
music,
con
or
con
as
mio
we saw
fratello Federico
yesterday
Gorrini,
with my brother
lo abbiamo
Federico
abbinato
Gorrini, we
al
paired
pareggio di
it
una squadra che
with
non tifiamo
the
e quindi è
even
stato bello lo stesso
result of
perché
a match
abbiamo
we are not fan
brindato
of.
al pareggio,
So we
all'importante pareggio
toasted
dell'Inter con
to
calice
this
di
even
champagne.
result of
Ecco,
Inter
questo
with
è
a glass of
diciamo la
champagne.
filosofia dello champagnista.
So this is
Poi
the
c'è il
philosophy
champagnista
of the
tecnico
champagnista,
che
the
allora in
champagne
una
lover.
degustazione
And then you have the
così
technical
molto veloce,
champagne
molto
lover
agile,
who,
molto
in a tasting like this, would
condivisiva, nel senso che poi
I
dopo
mean, in which we
sarete in
share,
posto di
because then
fare
I would
più
like to have your
quasi finito di
opinion.
parlare.
I'm
Poi
almost
quelli
done with my
parleranno i vini.
comments, then the wines will
Sono quelli
speak.
che invece parlano
Um,
di milligrammi di
so
zucchero,
they talk about milligrams of
di
sugar per liter,
con la
and
scarica, con la
then weak
carica, con la
bubbles,
piega,
strong bubbles, full
quanto lei ha
bubbles,
fatto
and
e
wood,
quanto, quanti che tipo di
and
procedimenti,
type
eccetera,
of
eccetera.
yeasts,
Quella
and
è
so on.
per me molto
And this is to
difficoltoso,
be
poi per
pretty
carità di gusto
challenging.
dobbiamo entrare nel
Then, if we
tecnico,
have to be technical,
credo che
fine.
nell'arco
I
del
think
tempo
after
imparate qualcosa
20
sullo
years, I
champagne.
think I've learned something about
Però,
champagne.
insomma,
However,
se a voi non dispiace io
if you don't
continuerei con
mind,
una
I would
degustazione da
continue with
champagnista, cioè ce la facciamo,
tasting among
ci assaggiamo e
champagne
magari
lovers. So we
vediamo
taste,
se
we
abbiamo
share,
abbastanza bottiglie le
and
riassaggiamo
if we
e
have enough
cerchiamo invece
bottles, we
di
taste again,
capire quelli che
and we
possono
try
essere
to
invece
understand
i veri
the
abbinamenti
nice
con il
pairings
brut, con il
with
rosé che
Brut
va a
or
seguire
Rosé that will follow.
e troviamo
And
quella che è invece la
we
filosofia e la
find
storia di
the
questa
philosophy and
azienda
the
se
history of
riusciamo a
this
trovarla nel calice del
winery, and we will
sorso
see
che è il
whether we
modo
can
migliore per
perceive it in
godersi lo
the sip
champagne.
and in the glasses,
Perché come,
which is the best way to
come
enjoy
dice
champagne.
sempre
Because, like
un altro carissimo amico
another
e
very dear
fratello,
friend of mine
insomma,
says,
è il direttore
who
generale
is
di
the
un consorzio molto
general manager of a very important consortium. He says any bubble that it comes from my consortium or Champagne or Franciacorta, bubbles are joy. Bubbles are easy drinking. Bubbles are simply that little parenthesis, pleasant parenthesis, golden parenthesis that ends a nice meeting, a nice dinner, a nice chat, or a nice moment of meditation. However,
avete assaggiato il Brut?
so have you tasted the Brut?
Come l'abbiamo trovato
So how did you find it on the palate?
Ci siamo avvicinati.
Okay, so we are close to that.
Esatto, 8 grammi litro.
8 grams per liter.
8 grammi litro.
So 8 grams per liter
Per questa
for
risposta
this
del calice, e vuol dire che è lavorato davvero molto bene.
glass, so it means that it's definitely very well made. So we pay attention to bubbles, and they do that much less. We know that champagne is about density and persistence, and like Pinot Noir from Aube. So we should focus less on bubbles than maybe that could be similar to an Italian Satin. And so creaminess is different.
Grazie Giovanna.
Thank you, Giovanna.
Ovviamente
Yes, sure, I agree. I agree, that's what I meant. And actually,
insomma, che è arrivata un po' da tutti, anche sottovoce, la
the
cremosità
creaminess is essential. Creaminess is essential. And the classical notes, such as citrus fruit, lemon zest, and the note between the lime zest and lime juice is the signature of Chardonnay. And then the texture that makes us feel the warmth, the intense warmth of Pinot Noir comes from Pinot Noir. This is the signature of Pinot Noir. This is what this variety does for this wine.
Rosé. Brut Rosé,
So,
anche in
Brut
questo caso,
Rosé, also in this case,
48 mesi
48 months on the lease. And by the way, this is an important characteristic which is between champagne lovers and technical champagne lovers. These are all indigenous yeasts. And all what is made internally at Gaston Cheq, I'm talking about yeasts, are all indigenous yeasts, autochthonous yeasts. And this is the third year that they are under conversion. And in France, this is so the rules are more tight to go from conventional farming to green, and the practices so the green practices and the ethical requirements. So Pinot Noir, 80%, 10% is Chardonnay, also for Rosé, and then one specific characteristic. They don't use for the maceration for 48 hours, but they prefer the old method of extracting the color. So the color we extract isn't due to maceration, soft maceration 48 hours, as usual, but so there is a draining, so the draining process, so the color is blocked and worked with this draining technique. So this is why we keep all the flavors and all the texture So we have a significant texture, and it's warm, it's full-bodied, and the nose isn't muscular as Pinot Noir. On the contrary, it's very delicate with roses and violets. And so this is very sapid without never forgetting to be a product, or at least the son of a Pinot Noir from Aube. And so obviously there are harsh weather conditions that are very important for the final result, because then we have this very good final result. For the sip, it's not very persistent, I agree, but this is not a characteristic. It's not negative. So the palate is creamy and round, immediate, linear, without too many frills, and it gets to the point immediately. And then it wanes. It wanes. However, I have to say that I think it can be best with a nice food, nice dish. So I think this wine likes to play around with ingredients. So the more the ingredients are fatty and lush, and because I am from Sardinia and I had the chance to taste it not only in Sardinia but also in Spain with pork meat, roasted pork meat. And that was very, very an excellent pairing. So it's short and it required multiple sips. So in any case, your palate is always agile and fresh, but with more, inviting you to drink multiple sips. So being short isn't a defect, and that's generally what we think. Do you agree, Fede? So having said that, in any case, also for the rosé, we have this stubbornness, this tenacity of Pinot that supports the balance of freshness and intensity. This is rosé. Then the third glass. Third glass, 100% Chardonnay, and before talking about it, I would like to explain something. Before, I would like to give you a small preview. As you all know, the three most important vintages for Chardonnay and Champagne are strange enough, and when I say that, everyone thinks I'm strange. So 1944, that was a year that was in 1944 we remind other things, and also very limited because it was difficult to harvest. But those who harvested made one of the best wines ever in Champagne. And in particularly those who were fortunate enough to grow Chardonnay. Then the second year is 1968, not just because it was the favorite vintage of James Bond, but because this was truly one of the greatest vintages in Champagne after 44, so 68. And then there were very important vintages, otherwise we wouldn't talk about Champagne, until 2015. That is to say, the year which in Champagne called the perfect storm. For 2015, in all across the Champagne region, this was the year that not only the one that they always remember, but they keep saying that this is the perfect vintage ever. Why a perfect storm? Because the climate interacted with the grapes like a child would play with his favorite teddy bear. And so rain, and then sun, and then rain again, and then some hugs of strong wind. And some producers even lost part of the harvest. And then again, July and August had very perfect daytime temperatures that could have been very devastating in other regions. On the contrary, here there was the right warmth and the right humidity to avoid any molds, any rot, and any problems to the low-lying grapes. And still today in Champagne, every year, above all elderly people, hang a nail with a sort of little brick and outdoor, with, and they write 1944 and 2015. This is like a sort of fortune-bringing device, like a prayer that all years can be like these 2 years. This is just Chardonnay, just stainless steel, and 72 months on the lease. And you can definitely perceive that. But this is true for the nose. They don't cause, so there's not much drive on the palate, but we have a great intensity that designs on the palate the greatness of that vintage. Certainly it's not a meditation wine, but it's a wine that you can just enjoy. And this is an important characteristic, definitely. So this is a very agile wine, incredibly agile. This is the typical bottle, you know. Do you know what we're mostly scared of? So wine journalists, food journalists, the main concern is to be invited to dinner by a friend who wants you to taste dishes cooked by his wife. Of course, that's terrible. We cannot say no. We cannot answer questions about how the wife is cooking. And above all, it's always a surprise dinner. And this means two things. We never know what to take. We have no reason of what we are going to drink, because it's important to know what to drink when you have a wife that wants you to try her dishes. And then third thing is that everything is unorganized. And so with this vintage, with this millésime, with this bottle, you can solve many, many problems. First of all, because it truly pairs with anything. Anything like a Chanel black skirt. And the freshness is intense, but not too much, not boasting too much, not excessive. And so we can taste simple cacio e pepe pasta or the Parmigiano with 5 different ages. And we can pair it with margherita or a capricciosa pizza. So it has that plus that makes it possible to keep it in the refrigerator for any occasion. You open it and it's certainly easy to pair. This is the characteristic of this wonderful Chardonnay. Of course, it's a Chardonnay, but Chardonnay, if it's not worked well, so if you don't pay enough attention to it, or if you don't have a great vintage like this one, probably it becomes the opposite of what a Chardonnay should be. So it becomes very difficult and too acidic, too citric, and doesn't offer a good combination and harmony with the lees, and so they fight a little bit, like yesterday's night soccer match. And now the fourth label. I guess you have already tasted the wine. Have you already tasted wine number 4? Very well. Then, before, taste it, and then I want to see your faces, and then I will tell you more. So raise your hand if you think or you have the sensation that it was kept in wood, in a barrel. Well, actually, I told you somehow. I wanted to help you. So it's only stainless steel, 72 months on the lease. It's a cuvée di cantina. So cuvée, it means that the 3 grapes from 3 vineyards were combined in the same year and in the same period. But above all of them, all these grapes were taken from 3 micro areas, micro plots, and were harvested to make this specific cuvée 2015. And for the winery, this is extremely important, simply because it's dedicated to Gaston Cheq, who loved this kind of champagne. So champagne that was part of the tradition. So the use of grapes with a post-blend cuvée, so all separated and then combined little by little during the year. So that none of these grapes would interfere with the sensations and emotions and the flavors and the aromas of the 3 varieties. It's 40% Pinot Noir, 40% Chardonnay, and 20% Pinot Meunier. Pinot Meunier, which we perceive in the nose slightly, but very much on the palate. Pinot Meunier gives us that long length that gives us freshness thanks to the acidity, and to give us, you said, strength. So you have the strength, the character. And probably this is the cuvée that best reflects the philosophy of this winery, their emotions, their desire to create a brand that could represent Gaston Cheq, the person to which it was devoted. How many wine experts from wine bars, etc.? Well, because there is something very important to know. And I would like to tell you this before the last one, because Gaston Cheq is the evidence that you can make a good quality wine, also quantity, 120,000 bottles, so not much, but you can make quality wine. And you can also believe in a popular democratic project, because the prices of Gaston Cheq are democratic from all standpoints, and can give back to the small producers the right amount of money, and then they can offer good margins to resellers, and they can offer the possibility of drinking a good champagne or excellent champagne for an affordable price, definitely affordable. And this is another characteristic that since 1961 the cooperative is trying to offer. Let's go back to the cuvée. So we tasted it yesterday, and the temperature was slightly better. Yesterday it was a bit fresher, but 2 degrees more, because champagne must be tasted at the right temperature. However, we have creamy bubbles, straight and intense, that support all the flavors of the 3 varieties. We can have this warmth and mouth feeling that is not too silky, but we see the muscles of Pinot Noir, and the push, the personality of Pinot Meunier is clear, and also the aromas of the Chardonnay are very clear and very straightforward. We don't need to waste time to look for them, because they are there. And so the sip is very immediate and very straightforward.
Siamo arrivati quasi alla conclusione. Quinta etichetta.
We are almost at the end, so the 5th label, and for this one there is a lot to say, but we will try to be short. Once I interviewed a colleague, and he kept speaking about all his adventures with wine, and not only with wine. Marco Mangiarotti. And in any case, I will try to be concise. The last label is a Pinot Noir, 100% Pinot Noir, and so 100% the essence of Gaston Cheq. And the philosophy of Gaston Cheq is enclosed, enshrined in this bottle that is nice to look at and so enjoyable to drink. Of course, it doesn't have the same agility of the Chardonnay that we have just tasted, the Blanc de Blanc. This is a Blanc de Noir that is muscular, and this is
estremamente strutturato possa essere anche
an extremely structured wine that, however, is very easy to drink. It's only important to choose the right occasion. It's a more champagne for the end of the meal with cheeses, cigar, good music. So let's say when we prefer to drink spirits. But in this case, certainly we have sort of romantic emotions. And it's a wine that you want to open not on big occasions, because this is a champagne that it's nice to open, not so much in big occasions, but in small occasions in which we want to cuddle ourselves, when we want a treat. So this is Pinot Noir. A very long palate, lingering, full, so with this nice length, with the intensity resulting from the aromas on the mouth. And so we have a small kind of curve, and a small note of chinchi, which is a South American citrus fruit. And if you taste that fruit, you perceive it here very clearly. And then this intermediate note of ripened grapes. So, like in the Brut, we have the bite of the fruit on the palate. So we feel like chewing it because it has a lot of strength and still a lot to grow. This is 2011. So this was a painful year. It wasn't an easy year. So certainly champagne makers didn't make much money because they had to cut production by 45%. But it was one of the years to remember for the quality of the grapes and for the warmth that it would convey to the wine. This is a complex wine, but not necessarily difficult. In any case, this is a glass we can drink with, and that doesn't require you to think too much. So now I'd like to have your opinion, if you like, Raffaele. What do you think? Well, I would like to have a couple of words of Chardonnay and a couple of words of Blanc de Noir. Well, I think that they're both pretty surprising. I liked Chardonnay for the vintage. Certainly the year, the weather of that year has had some impact, and the complexity is good. And I would like to ask you a question. The common denominator is that it's drinkability, so they are very easy to drink, all 5 of them. And then I think that they are just for different moments. So it's not that there is one I prefer. I could tell you, yes, maybe my favorite, but it's my taste. And this is, it would be wrong for me to tell you because I would influence the opinion of the others. So you know which one I like because you know what I like. And then since you asked me about Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, I think that here Pinot Noir is reflects very much the identity of Pinot Noir. So if you sniff the last nose, you cannot say there is no Pinot Noir. And then you have all the complexity that opens it up. And you didn't say something. You didn't tell me how many months for 2011 for on the lease. You said 72 for the other two. 84 months on the lease before disgorgement. And no wood at all. And to obtain this result, it's also macerated on the skins for about 10 days. This is the result of that type of maceration. It's the only one that does that. Because they don't macerate a rosé, and so the only one that gets maceration is this one. Do we have any additional questions? Giovanna, what do you think? Can you tell me a couple of words? I think this is a great territory for Pinot Noir and for this Maison. The strength of the territory is very important, and also the use of stainless steel. So as you said, sometimes the sips are a bit short, but of course we taste, but actually what matters is drinkability. So to make sure that the sip is positive and acceptable. And so I think that we have had a great tasting because now we know another champagne that we can certainly enjoy. Thank you, Giovanna, and thank you all. Do you have any other questions? Okay, in any case, I'm available here. And we can stay here until Sunday. So you can ask any questions. I have just a question about the increase in temperatures, especially Aube is disadvantaged because there are a few producers in this area. So what do you expect to happen in the future? So how can this evolve? Yes, this is something that we have already discussed. I think that they will decrease the yields very much because the only way to have a continuity in yields, but let's say all producers will decrease their yields because climate change will affect all producers, and certainly with good pruning. So I think pruning is the only possibility, and in all areas and in that have compact, close bunches. Pinot Noir is a bunch that looks like one big berry, and so you have to prune the leaves and the canopy correctly, and otherwise climate change and drought, and also the different seasons without intense pruning and without good control. And it would be interesting to use real technology because
e un vitigno, un ceppo
today
e un fruttale ha necessità di tecnologia.
all the parts of
Perché
the vineyard require
anticipando
technology,
ovviamente quelli che
because
sono le evoluzioni climatiche
if we
della stagione,
anticipate the climate of the season,
prevedere cosa succederà fra 20 anni,
because I mean it's
a parole
impossible
siamo
to
tutti
predict
bravi, bisogna
what
vedere
will happen
realmente.
in
Il problema
20
però
years.
invece è quello che succederà
Because
la
what
prossima
matters is
settimana,
what will
la
happen
settimana prima
next
della
week,
vendemmia
the
o
week
la
before
settimana
harvest, or
successiva e
the
quindi la preparazione
week
della vendemmia
after.
l'anno
And
prossimo.
so,
E questo lo può fare solo e
and
esclusivamente la
this can be
tecnologia.
done
Ci
only
sono
by
tantissime
technology.
tecnologie
There are
legate
many
proprio al
technologies
controllo climatico
to
immediato e
control the
all'intervento
climate
immediato.
and to intervene
E
immediately.
devo dire,
And I have to say,
nell'OB e in
in
particolare
OB, and
questa
in
cooperativa
particular
e
this
un'altra cooperativa che
cooperative
ha
and
dei
another
vigneti
cooperative
molto vicini
that has
e
wines
circostanti
very close
a questa cooperativa,
to
da
this
questo punto di vista stanno
cooperative,
lavorando
are
tantissimo.
working a lot
Solo la
on this.
cooperativa Doulandion
The
quest'anno
Doulandion
ha investito
cooperative has
circa 5
invested
milioni di
about
euro
5
solo ed
million
esclusivamente
euro
sulla tecnologia di
only on
impianto.
technology for the vineyards.
Proprio perché ormai agli
Because
sgoccioli della
by now
conversione
they are at the
ovviamente
end of the
dovranno trovare
organic
anche il
conversion
modo
process, and
per
so they had to
mantenere
find a
il
way to
tenore produttivo che si ha
maintain
oggi.
the production that
Questo è.
they have
Grazie
today.
della domanda.
Thank you for your
Certo,
question.
come no?
I have another
Un tuo
question.
parere sincero sulle vighe semi-large,
So,
che
what do you
sono
think about
abbastanza
the
frequenti, e un
semi-large
po' più
wines
nello specifico anche su una cosa
and
recentissima sulla lesione del Voltis
the
sulla varietà
Voltis
SVT04,
variety in
che un po'
CVC
complementano
of
tra
Champagne,
gli esistenti comunque alla pratica un po'.
which is a resistant variety?
Posso essere riassuntivo o trovo che
I
sia
think that
assoluta in questo momento?
it,
No, correggo.
so let me rephrase.
Adesso
At
in
the moment in
Champagne ci
Champagne,
sono tante altre
there
problematiche.
are many other
E
problems.
in realtà quella che tu hai
And
citato
what you
è la
mentioned
prima delle
is the
problematiche.
first of the problems, the first
Dover
problem.
necessariamente
And
intervenire con
having to
altri inserimenti
intervene with
così velocemente e senza
other
dare ulteriori
additions
spiegazioni
without
o
too many
senza approfondire
explanations
l'argomento, la
or
trovo una,
investigating this topic
lasciatemelo dire, la trovo
is
un'azione tipica da francese.
something that
Poi non voglio
typical
innescare
French
polemiche,
would do
però
that.
si poteva aspettare,
But
non
they
era
could wait. I
necessario così
mean,
tanto
it
correre
was not
così
so
all'ultimo momento,
necessary to run
tanto
at the very
ancora
last
ad
moment.
esempio, proprio
There
perché il
is
cambiamento
much less to
climatico,
do.
ragazzi, quest'anno ha
Also
fatto dei
because
danni
climate change has
terribili
caused
che li abbiamo
incredible
vissuti tutti,
damage this year,
perché sul riscaldamento di impianto
because
poi
we
abbiamo
have
respinta in
warmth,
fumo
very warm
pentadienidi, perché ci siamo
summer,
ritrovati la grandine, questo
and
anche in
also we
Italia,
had
così
the
in un
hail
momento
at
senza
the
che
end of
nessuno l'avesse
summer.
previsto,
Nobody
perché quello che è
predicted
successo in
that,
Prosecco, ragazzi,
because
è roba,
what happened in
è
Prosecco
roba
with
da
hail
1800, no?
is something that would happen in the
E allora che c'è
18th
successo?
century.
C'era proprio necessità di,
And
invece di
so
pensare
why did
magari
they think
ad
of
altri tipi
that
di
and not
tecnologie.
about other
Spero di
technologies?
averti risposto in
So
maniera
I hope I
esaustiva.
answered.
Fede.
C'è un tema, secondo me,
I
molto
think there
importante
is
nel
something
posizionamento
important, which is the price positioning of
di cui
this
abbiamo
brand,
parlato, e secondo me con
because
la qualità del
I
genere
think
del
that with
bicchiere non
quality
siamo
in the
neanche
glass,
per forza
this is a
il
great strength
mercato
of
vede
on the
ma
market,
la
because the
qualità
quality is
importantissima che si
remarkable,
abbina
and that
alla possibilità di
gives the
arrivare
possibility
a tante
to
persone, perché
be
è un prodotto
drunk
che
by many
batte
people, because
caratteristiche
the
interessanti. Volevi
price is very
commentare, credo sia
interesting.
il caso di divulgarli.
I
Con
think you can say
grandissimo
something
piacere,
about the
sì. Beh, è
price.
uno dei
Oh
punti
yes,
di
it's a
forza
pleasure.
di
My
Gaston Cheq,
pleasure.
essendo
This is one of the strengths of
insomma
Gaston
in
Cheq.
Italia un brand
Since
abbastanza
this
nuovo,
brand is pretty new
abbiamo
in
lavorato
Italy,
con la casa
we
madre
worked
in maniera
with the
tale da
Maison
innanzitutto
in
avere
such
un
a way as
controllo dei
to
prezzi,
have
che è una cosa importante, che con le
control of
prezzi passa
prices
parola. Però stiamo
on the
parlando
shelves.
di
But
così a scaffale, poi
so on the
considerate
shelves, then
naturalmente
of course
la varietà del
there can
rivenditore,
be
del solitario,
different
eccetera. Diciamo che a scaffale partiamo
resellers,
dai
etc.
22
So we
euro del
start
brut
from
per
22
arrivare
euros
al
of Brut,
massimo del
and
Blanc de Blanc
maximum
che
for
siamo
Blanc de
intorno ai
Blanc would be
55 euro
55
a
euros.
scaffale.
on the
si è
shelf.
deciso col
We
distributore
decided with the
italiano
Italian
di
distributor
lavorare solo ed
to work
esclusivamente
only
con enoteche piuttosto
with
che soprattutto il settore Oreca,
the Oreca business,
semplicemente perché chi
simply
soprattutto in
because,
ambito di ristorazione e
especially for
hoteleria sono
restaurants and
attualmente
hotels,
i clienti che hanno
because these are the
immediatamente
customers
capito il
who
progetto e
have
la
understood
filosofia
the
di Gaston,
project and
spicchierano
of
parecchio. È uno
Gaston,
champagne che poi
drink a lot of champagne.
tranquillamente
This is a
vende
champagne you
packaging
can sell
perché
by the
hai il
glass,
margine giusto
because you can
anzi
have the
hai un
right
margine
margin
un po' più che giusto proprio per venderlo al
to sell
calice
it by
con
the glass.
oltretutto una vendita
And
anche con un prezzo molto molto
the
molto molto
price is
vantaggioso
very,
per
very
il consumatore
interesting.
finale e che dà però a tutta la
However,
filiera,
that
quindi
gives the entire
dal
chain,
produttore
so from
sino ad
producers
arrivare al
until
consumatore finale, quindi un
consumers,
cerchio che chiude molto bene con ognuno ha il suo
each
vantaggio,
one
perché
can
come
have a
diciamo sempre,
benefit.
soprattutto io e te Fede, il vino va da
Because,
capire
like
proprio
we
tutto
say, we have to
e
sell
tutte le belle
the
filosofie del
wines
no, vabbè, vediamo
and
perché tiro sul prezzo,
not
però poi
selling it
stringo
and
su tutto il resto.
increasing the
Non
price.
funziona. Le
And
cantine
so
funzionano
wineries
solo ed
work
esclusivamente
only
quelle che si mettono in
if
testa che sono delle
they
aziende, non sono
understand that they are
delle, come
companies
dire, delle fondazioni
and
che
not
possono permettersi di
foundations
andare
that
sotto
can
luce.
lose
Molto bene,
money.
Fede. Benissimo. Allora, intanto vi saluto,
So
vi
first of
ringrazio
all,
per
I'd
aver
like to
partecipato a
thank
questa
you and for
manifestazione di Gaston Cheq.
thanking you for
Spero
your
che i vini vi
participation.
siano
I
piaciuti e che
hope
vi
you liked
abbiano
the wines,
quantomeno
and
incantino tanto me
I
che
hope
insomma spero che vi siate messi
that
il cotone nelle orecchie per non farvi infastidire dalle mie parole e godervi il
you
calice
enjoyed
e spero che
the
insomma vi abbiano
glasses
lasciato
more
un
than my
piccolo
words,
ricordo.
and I hope
Ovviamente la Milano Wine
you
Week
will leave with
continua
a nice
questa
memory.
meravigliosa
Of
quarta
course,
edizione,
Milano
io
Wine Week
continuo a
continues, this
quinta,
wonderful
scusatemi,
fifth edition.
ragazzi è scritto anche bello grande, vabbè.
It's a
Questa
fifth,
quinta
so the fifth
edizione
edition
continua con
continues
tantissime
with
attività,
many
io ringrazio
activities.
ancora
So I'd like
Federico
to
Gordini
thank
per avermi
Federico
dato questa
Gordini
bella
for inviting
opportunità
me, for giving me this great
e
opportunity.
insomma continuiamo con la Milano
And
Wine
so
Week.
we continue with Milano Wine Week.
Ragazzi, allora io sono contento per due
So I'm
motivi.
very happy for
Primo,
two reasons.
perché ho
The first is that
Lara,
I have Fra and Lara, which are like family to me, so it's a great pleasure.
sono felice perché
And then I'm happy
noi
because
come
we are
Gordini
two very
siamo
like-minded
sempre
persons. We always say things they are, which is pretty
ogni volta
uncommon. And so sometimes people don't like us, but
never mind. Esatto,
never
quella
mind.
cosa. Però credo che
However,
insieme
I
a
think
persone
that
che
all
hanno voglia di
together,
far
I mean,
crescere
people
questo
who
mondo
want
si
this
possono
world to
secondo
grow,
me
we
la
can do a
cosa
lot.
bella è poter
So,
condividere
what is
questo
beautiful
momento
is
con
to
tante
share this
persone,
moment
con
with
tanti
many people,
amici
with many friends,
che si danno
and
tanto da
who
fare
work
sul cammino,
hard for
i
the
nostri
world of wine,
influencer,
our
Matteo
influencers,
e
Matteo,
su questo
who is
percorso e
building a
poi per
nice
vedere le
project with
persone
me,
che stanno
and
facendo
also
tanta
people who are working a lot
bene,
like for the
che
wine world,
insomma
like
sono
Raffaele.
sempre sul pezzo. E lo vedi perché non si
And
vedevamo con Raffaele, non so da quanto tempo non si
I
vedesse,
haven't
perché
seen Raffaele for quite a
sappiamo
while,
che
but we
è
meet on
reciproco e sappiamo
social
quanto sia
media,
dedicato al
and so
lavoro.
we know how hard we
Noi
are
abbiamo creato
working.
una casa
So we
a
created a
Milano dove
house
si
here in
possono
Milan, which might make
crescere,
sense here,
ma anche
but also
qualcosa
to
di nuovo,
experiment
poi penso
something
che
new,
una persona che ama
because a
questo
person who
mondo,
loves wine, and
Francesco
Francesco has proven that,
possa poi esprimere
can
questa passione per
express the love for this world in different ways.
arrivi alla distribuzione,
Journalism,
chi
distribution,
veramente ama il
because
conoscere
those who
possa
love
poi
this world
portare questo
can
stesso approccio
adopt
in
this approach and
pezzi
apply
di
it
pasta,
in
ok?
various areas.
Quello che noi facciamo. Quindi è un piacere per
So it's a
me
great pleasure
presentare qui
to
Gaston Check,
have Gaston
un
Cheq
progetto
here,
che credo
because this is a project I like a lot, and I
grazie
like this man too very much. Thank you.